Joining me now, one of the three principal authors of the new report, Annette Bernhardt. She's policy co-director of the National Employment Law Project. Also joining me to take your phone calls with some of your own questions, if you're in any of these situations, is Amy Carroll, supervising attorney at Make the Road New York, an organization that, among other things, provides legal services to low-income New Yorkers. So, Annette and Amy, thanks very much for coming into our studios. Welcome to WNYC.
Thanks for having us.
And first off, Annette, who are we talking about? Who did you survey for this study?
We surveyed, like you said, more than 4,000 workers who worked in low-wage industries. And like you said, the industries run the gamut of the urban economy in the three cities. It's all types of workers, people who are born in the U.S., immigrants. It's really across the board in terms of the demographics. What we found is that the types of violations that you talked about are really widespread and prevalent. This is not just a few rogue employers. This is not just a few businesses at the periphery of the economy. It's really across the board in every single industry we looked at. And I would say, on Labor Day, this is a pretty grim report. Our employment and labor laws are really not working for these workers.
And let's go through some of these different categories. And probably many of our listeners are surprised to hear some of these categories, like being forced to work when you're sick. But, Amy, you told us off the air about a couple of examples of cases you've worked on. You collaborated with the New York State Attorney General's office on an investigation into a couple of supermarkets. Tell us about that.
Sure. I mean, the report really reflects what our workers are seeing. Make the Road New York is a community-based organization made up of nearly 7,000 low-income New Yorkers, and our members see all these problems. So we have folks working in grocery stores doing the bagging of the groceries, and they're actually working just for tips. The grocery stores schedule them and require them to show up to bag the groceries, but the stores weren't, in fact, paying the workers anything. So that was the case with the Attorney General's office. We also see...
You mean they're not? It's not legal to hire somebody to work just for tips?
No, it's not. The employer has to pay a base wage. It's also really rampant in a lot of the green grocers you have around the city. We have members who are working 12-hour days, 5, 6, 7 days a week for a flat weekly wage with no overtime. And, it's just really basically every pocket of the city has these kind of violations. It's really shocking.
And another case involved pizza delivery workers in the Bronx. What was going on there?
So delivery workers are also... I think I probably haven't met a delivery worker who's paid appropriately. Oftentimes they're working incredibly long shifts for a flat shift pay of, say, $10, $15 a shift, working, again, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And in this particular case, there was a pretty creative yet definitely illegal scheme where the restaurant actually made the delivery worker front the money for the delivery, take the delivery out to the customer, and then keep the money from the customer. And it's a piece of, I think businesses are really shifting risk onto their workers. So in that case, they're having to front the money. The workers had to provide their own bicycles and repair the bicycles. I mean, it's just really rampant throughout the city.
And Annette, you'll be releasing the city-specific numbers in the coming months, I gather. But based on your knowledge of New York City, is there anything specific to the way the workers are being exploited here?
It's a great question, and it's something we've been getting a lot. It's sort of like, which city is the worst? And I have to tell you, I don't think any of the cities is the worst. I mean, they certainly differ in the types of industries they have, but I'm actually struck by how consistent the findings are across the three cities. If you look at the restaurant industry, you're seeing exactly the same kinds of strategies, the grocery store industry, for janitors. And what that's saying is that what we're tapping here is business strategy. Right? We're not just tapping, haphazard decisions by a single employer. The fact that it's so consistent across the cities means there's a real warning bell here.
And one of the patterns that you found was widespread employer intimidation. Give me some examples.
The intimidation tactics run the gamut. The most obvious one is, when workers complain the employer fired them. Threatened to call immigration or even called immigration. Some employers cut workers' wages, dock their wages. They cut their hours, which is especially punitive right now during the recession when workers are desperate for hours. One of the hardest findings for us was we saw such prevalent violations. More than 2/3 of our sample in the previous week had a violation, but only 1 in 5 actually made a complaint in the previous year or tried to organize a union. When they complained, more than half were retaliated against. But the rest of the folks that we talked to, we asked, why didn't you complain? And they said, I'm scared of being retaliated against. And as we show, with good reason.
Your stat here among these over 4,000 workers who were surveyed, 1 in 5 workers reported having lodged a complaint about wages to their employer or tried to form a union. 43% of those people said they experienced some form of illegal retaliation, firing or suspension or something else. So, Amy, how do you avoid this kind of retaliation? What do you say to workers who are afraid of being fired, especially in this economy when many may see it as too risky?
It's really a tricky problem because, as Annette has said, if you're in a low-wage job, and a day work matters, and a day without work can be really crushing for your family. What we find is oftentimes workers wait until they've left a job to actually do something. But one of the interesting things that I think can get downplayed in these kind of conversations is these workers actually have a lot of power. So we've had a lot of examples where workers themselves, we support them, they go back to the boss and say, you owe me this amount of money. For example, there was a bagel shop in Queens where a woman came to us. She was drastically underpaid. We helped her out. She went back. She got the money she was owed, and also we helped her negotiate an agreement with the boss that he would give raises to the current workers and post a notice that he had signed in Spanish in the bagel shop. So I think there are all these sort of small stories out there of workers actually standing up and enforcing their own rights that often go unnoticed.